Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop, and today we're going to play around with something a little new to me, but still along with lasers, and that is screen printing using the xTool screen printer. They have come up with a process for using steel screens that use a standard emulsion, but the laser to burn the image into the screen. We're going to take a look at their setup, how we do that. So if you're interested in this or just want to find out more, stay tuned. We're going to jump right into it. I am no means an expert on screen printing, but I've done it a couple of times and it is a fun process to make some unique products. The basic gist of it is you have this screen material, and normally it's going to be into a frame that's holding it nice and tight. And it's a very fine screen, but it's covered with this emulsion that generally will block the screen out. And the normal process is that you would set up your artwork on here, and you would then cover it in the emulsion. You would expose the emulsion to like UV light that would cure it, and then you would peel back your areas that you wanted to not be exposed, and therefore you would have your image that you're going to allow the ink to pass through. Now in this case, xTool is using more of a steel-based screen that can hold up to the laser, and you cover the entire emulsion, and then you laser away the emulsion where you don't want it, and it creates your logo and or your image. And so you can kind of see that here on this one. This is something I did on a live stream that we previewed, just engraving my logo with this, and I'll link down below if you want to check that out as well. But figured I'd do a more full process on the xTool screen printer, setting up in the laser and such here with this video. So we're going to take a look at the various parts. We'll get a fresh screen set up into one of their frames. We'll set the some artwork up in xTool Creative Space, and then we'll get it into the press or the jig to get it screen printed, and we'll see how it does. So let's get over closer to the workbench. We'll jump into it. All right, so let's start by talking about the frame, which is going to hold your screen in place. With the basic kit, we get one of these frames, and the idea is you can put your screen in here. And then on these channels, they have these kind of metal rods with kind of a flap. What they will do is they will sit into this channel, they will push in the screen, fold down, and then these cams will tighten everything up. So that makes them easily removable and reusable to a point. Once you remove them out of the frame, you're going to lose any positioning that you may have had. So if you're doing single color, that's not a problem. If you're doing multicolor, you're going to want to try to keep them in the frames, because that's going to then key off of where you laser them and then put them into the jig when you go to press and put the ink on them. But that's a whole nother topic. We're going to focus on single color. So in this one, we can pull the screens out. We could put it back in, retighten it up. And you can do that a number of times as long as you keep the screen clean. The ink, it will dry up and it'll kind of clog up that screen over time. So you can run a few prints, and then you want to clean it off with water. And then you can take it out of here, put another screen in if you want. And you can reuse that a number of times before you're going to need to probably clean off the whole screen and apply new emulsion, start over. So they are somewhat reusable, but they do also offer, you can buy extras as well. So I think those are going to be listed on their site at a 4-pack for about $25 for the screens alone, and then these frames, I believe, are $60. But let's jump in. Let's get a fresh screen installed in here, and I'll show you kind of how it all fits together and tightens up. Okay, so we're starting with the frame here, and the thing that you want to make sure is that your cams are all in the open position, because as they close like this, they're actually pulling this bar down, and that's what's going to tighten up the screen. So just want to make sure they're all fold out so that they have the least amount of tension on there. And then we want to put the cardboard down into the frame, and you want to have this kind of lay somewhat flat on here. Now, some of these have these tabs, and I think maybe they've removed those on future ones, but you just want to fold those out of the way if they are in there. But you want to get the cardboard to basically just sit in the frame like that. So this should be fairly flat up on top. Next, we're going to take our bars like this, and when you fold them in, these flaps are going to go towards the outside. So we're going to start up top here, keeping our screen centered. You just kind of push that in and then curl that under, fold that flat like that. Same thing with the one on the end here. We're going to just kind of push this down in, fold that flap, and then go ahead with these side ones as well. Just kind of, you don't worry about getting it too tight on the front end, but you want it to be fairly snug. It'll tighten up with those cams. Just kind of roll that round bar into its slot. And then once they're all in like that, you can start pulling your cams shut. They will tighten up, and that will pull the screen nice and tight. And then there's just the ones on the end here. This tightens it top to bottom. So now you see that that's fairly tight. We're going to flip this over. We're going to pull this cardboard out. And then you'll notice, tight as a drum and nice and smooth. So you want to keep this clean. You want to keep dust off of it on both sides. So just kind of check to make sure that none of the leftover, sometimes the cardboard, there's a little bit of adhesive that sticks. You want it very clean and nice and tight. But that's it to getting the screen set up into the frame. Next step is that we can get it aligned into the laser and then start working with it in Creative Space. All right, so now if you picked up the multicolor kit, the advanced kit, it may come with this fixing bar. And what this does is sit into your xTool D1. Your feet on your laser are going to sit into these kind of round slots, and that'll lock it in place up against this bar. And then it has these little pegs here that will allow the frame to align into those pegs, so that if you're doing multiple frames that you want to have different colors and layers to your printing, this will allow you to line up each one of those frames. So I'm going to get this set up with my D1 Pro 20 watt in my custom enclosure. It will fit in here, and then we'll be able to use this even though we're just going to do a single color. But let's get this into the laser. We'll get the frame in there as well. Then we're going to jump into setting up our artwork. There, now it's fixed. The feet are in front and back, and this can't move separate from the laser. So now we have these notches in the frame. We can just rotate this around. We can set these into there, and that will mean that this is, I mean, you can slide it this way, but top to bottom, and if you push it up all the way against there, then it's not going to be able to move, and you'll be able to engrave everything on your screen. So while we're here, we can go ahead and set our focus. We're going to flip our foot down. We're going to bring this down just so it touches. Now, you don't want it to necessarily push into the screen, so just bring it down so it just touches. Also make sure your sub-focus is set up. And now we're good to go with focus. Let's jump into Creative Space. All right, so we're over here at the computer, and we are going to play around with a simple design. Now, xTool did include this tote bag with the sample, so we're going to be playing with this, and I went ahead and went to a local craft store. I was even able to pick up a spare one just in case. So these are just kind of your woven fabric bags, and great for, you know, grocery shopping or wherever you're just hauling your stuff around. So we're going to play around with that. Now I'm going to be doing this on the xTool D1 Pro, as we saw setting up with that bar. You can use any laser with these, as well as you could use Lightburn as well. I'm going to be working with xTool Creative Space just to kind of use their products and use some of their presets. However, they do have some recommended settings for engraving on these screens. I'll try to link to that information if I can find it. Otherwise, I'll try to maybe put it on the screen or something. But point is, you don't need to use an xTool laser with this. You don't need to use Creative Space. You can use your own laser in Lightburn or Laser GRPL, just using those settings. However, we're going to use the xTool stuff because they have it all integrated, makes it so much easier. So let's jump into the software and take a look at what we're going to do. All right, so we're here in xTool Creative Space. I do have it connected to the D1 Pro. And one of the nice things that you can do is actually use their predefined material. So we're going to come over here to the user-defined material, and if you see in here, we actually have coated screen 100 mesh. Now, if you're not seeing it, you can come into this more materials, and you can go through and find additional ones that might not be listed in your creative space. So we have the coated screen 100 mesh. We already have that. So we're going to go ahead and hit use. And that will set up our whole material for our speeds and feeds for that. All right, so I'm going to go with a simple custom design my wife made. Again, on these bags, we're going to be just adding something. So I'll go ahead and import an image here. She created this in Illustrator and whatnot, and it just says, for my trinkets, a little kind of a starburst kind of thing. Now, anytime you're working with anything that's imported, you might have some things to fix. So let me just show you really quick. Now, if we select all this and we go to the engrave, it's going to look a little funny because we have these extra areas in here. And the reason that is, I think, is because we have most likely double lines there. So I'm just going to switch this back to score. And we are going to quickly zoom in on these. So I'm going to select outside of there. I'm going to click on just that one and delete it. And there we go. Yep, it was a second layer. So again, going to do the same thing here. I'm going to delete that extra line. And the rest of them look okay. Now, the other thing I want to do is instead of having these be individual objects, I want to combine them. So I'm going to select them all. We're going to come up to the combine. And actually, for this one, we want to subtract at overlap. Click on that. And now you see all those extra lines go away. We have just one object selected here. Now we can work with this as a single item. So what we want to do is kind of figure out how big we want to make this. And we'll see there. Looking at my bag here, I want to kind of center it in the middle. So I'm going to take measurement here and we're going to go maybe about 6 inches square, give or take, about 6 inches wide. It's a little oblong. So the conversion on that is going to be about 150 millimeters wide. So I'm going to make sure this is locked orientation. We're going to take our width and we're going to just take this down to 150. And that keeps the orientation the same. Now, the way we are engraving this, we're actually engraving on the reverse side. So we're going to need to also rotate this. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to rotate it this way. And now that's going to put the top of the engraving towards the back side of the frame, which means that when you look at it, it's going to be correct. But then we also do need to reflect this, and we're going to now reflect this vertically, so that is going to reverse it that way. So that will now, since we're engraving on the back, it's going to engrave it reverse, but when we place our screen down on our material, we're actually going to be running the ink from the opposite side that we're engraving it on, so then it'll be right side up. And I'm orienting it with the top to my left because that will allow us to slide the bag in top to bottom. We can get it lined up and then we'll just pull the ink down over the top. Depending on where you're putting your engraving into your item and onto your screen will depend on which rotation you want it. So just kind of keep in mind that you're engraving on the back side and then what area you want it. Let's get this lined up and we'll get it framed in the laser and ready to burn. All right, we're back here at the laser. Like I say, I have these pins pushed in all the way, so this frame is kind of locked in there. For this, it wouldn't really matter so much as we're only doing a single color, but it's good practice to use it that way. And so due to the size of this, I'm going to kind of center it more. It's just going to need to take up that space. Maybe we'll be able to do something smaller, but we're going to go ahead and let the laser frame out and kind of see the area it's going to go. That all looks pretty good, so we can jump back into Creative Space, make sure our settings are right, and then we'll send this off to burn. All right, so we completed our framing. Everything looks good there, and now we did make sure we've changed this to engrave. And what they have set up is power of 70, speed of 178 millimeters a second, and then 160 lines per centimeter. So that is what xTool recommends for the D1 Pro 20 watt. If you're using one of their other lasers, they'll have that plugged in there. Otherwise, if you're using your own laser, those are going to be some that you can kind of estimate off of. You're going to need to do the conversion if you're using millimeters per minute. Remember to multiply that by 60. Lines per inch versus lines per centimeter. Again, you're going to need to do those conversions. But we've got this all set up. We've got it set to engrave. We have our power and whatnot ready to go. So now we can just go ahead and send this off the laser and we'll let it burn this image. All right, our screen has finished engraving, so we can go ahead and pull this out. However, you do want to just check your screen before you move it and ensure that it has gotten through the material. If it's a little bit thicker of an emulsion, it may still look a little white. What you're looking for is a very clear engraving through the screen so that you can kind of see through it. So mine does look good, so we're going to go ahead and pull this out. And so here, as you can see it on the back, this is what I'm talking about. It's nice and clear. And if we flip this around, you should be able to read it okay for my trinkets. And like I said, you can see through this screen. There's not anything blocking that. So if yours looks a little white, like maybe some of the emulsion didn't quite get burned off, go ahead and burn it again. Otherwise, you're going to have problems getting the ink through to your material. So with this all done, now what we can do is start getting it set up in the actual screen printing press here. So let's take a look at a few of those features on there, and then we will get to the actual application of ink. All right, so this is the basic screen printing setup here. What we have is a work surface, and so they do provide this wooden work surface. It has some spots here that lock into these pegs, and these pegs are here because up front we have some knobs. Let's see if I can bring this down just a little bit so you can see. We got some knobs that will adjust each individual pin, so you can do that to help align your work. So these need to sit down into those pegs, and once they do, your whole machine will kind of be locked in place. And now you will be able to see on the front here, they have the little directions that it'll adjust the front side to side, the back side to side, and then the whole thing front to back, just to help you align your project to the screen when you put it in here. Now the screen frame is going to get captured into this bar up front, and then again, there's some cam locks up here that do then kind of lock it in place. That's to help everything kind of stay stationary. And then to account for various different depths of items, they also have this knob on the side. So you can release that, this slides up. It'll give you about, I think, 4 inches of working space on here that you can have some larger items and print on top of them. So what you will want to do is bring this down to your desired height, lock it in, and then when your frame is in here, then it'll lay flat on your object. Now the board default is a wooden board. It does have a grid on there. And then they provide this kind of sticky mat. So as you can see here, as I peel this up, we do have a board with a grid on here. And then they provide this extra mat here. So the idea with this mat is that your items will kind of grab onto that and be held in place. Now they do come with kind of these clear plastic sheets on each side. So I keep mine on there when I'm not using the press, just to keep little bits from getting on here and getting dust on there. I would recommend doing that. It just kind of keeps the thing a little bit more clean, and then you'll be able to use it much longer. So that's the basic gist of it. We can then bring our frame and our screen over here. We'll get this locked in. Then we'll start getting the item squared up and positioned on here for the ink application. All right, so before I go and applying this down here, I want to try to get my graphic kind of centered where I want it. And I can tell that it's a little bit off from this center line. So I'm going to try to bring this over. So like I say, you can adjust the front and then you can adjust the rear. You can just kind of slide it over to where I'm looking at through my screen. I know it's hard to see, but I'm trying to bring that center line over as best I can so it lines up kind of in the middle of our engraving. And it's pretty close. I also want to try to make sure that it is square to everything. So now I know that if I get my bag centered on here, that I'll be able to get it lined up. Now you also want to kind of take reference of where your item is so we can get it up far enough. Now this is open underneath here. What this will do is allow us to actually bring our material hopefully around it. And in this case, that bag is too narrow for that. So let's go ahead with this other one, see if this one will fit on here. Does look like it's a little bit wider, so we're gonna go ahead and check that fit. Yes, it will. but we need to also make sure that it'll go up high enough for our engraving, and it's not quite. So I'm gonna go ahead and play with it this way instead. Now you're gonna wanna get these handles out of the way. You want it to be about as flat as we can, so once we're pretty sure of where it's gonna sit, I'm gonna kind of keep everything out of the way, ensure that it's gonna go down fairly flat, because we're gonna be pushing this through and then the ink is gonna push through onto that. So once we're feeling like it's gonna fit okay, go ahead and pull our plastic off. Let's get this repositioned. So here we've got our kind of our sticky material helping to hold this in place. So we're going to try to line that up. It's again looking at where our top line is. I'm just going to move this up a little bit further. Now ideally we'd have this top surface held down as well, but we want to try to make sure we get any of the wrinkles out, which will help give us a better application of the ink. And not have this bunched up too much, but out of the way. Might even be able to get that tucked under there some. There we go. I think that'll work. It comes up a little bit high because this is bunched up and not laying flat, but we'll hopefully be able to work with this. This is definitely a learning curve as to the process and also what materials work well. So you'll be able to hold this down. You're going to squeegee this on. Now the application is you're going to put some ink along the top, and you're going to take your squeegee here. You're going to hold your material down, your frame down, and we'll squeegee along the screen like so, pushing that ink onto the material. So that's where you really want this to lay as flat as possible, and not be binding up on anything. So I'm actually going to release this just a little bit, bring this up a little bit more so this lays a little more flat. Take your time, get that set up okay, and then we'll give it a shot. All right, so like I said, I got the basic kit and it came with just 4 inks, and that was black, blue, yellow, and red. So we're gonna go ahead with the red. It's actually kind of maybe a little more of a magenta than red, but we'll see how it dries. This does air dry, so you can just put it on and then let it sit. You can apply a little bit of heat to try to accelerate it. But the important thing is that once we put the ink on there, we want to squeegee it out, get our print on here, and then either move on to our next application, or we're going to want to clean that off because, like I said, this is going to start air drying. So I'm going to get this opened up, and they do provide you with this nice little metal spatula that we can dip into the inkwell, put them on there. And it's important to use enough ink to cover your entire surface, because if you get too light with it, it will fade out as you go across your engraving. So let me get this all set up and we'll go through that process and see how it turns out. All right, so this squeegee does have a little magnet back here, so it'll stick to the frame here if you want. It'll stick to the back. Just make sure it's handy. And like I said, we want to take some of this ink and we're gonna apply it along the side, because we're gonna pull this towards us. And again, you want to use enough ink that it's going to cover your entire engraving, your entire image and such. So, and you can probably reclaim some of this if you have extra at the end. So put a good dollop on there so that you don't run thin. So in the middle here where we have some letters, I'll add a little bit extra. That could possibly be too much, but like I say, we're kind of learning here. Just be careful not to get that all over everything. So again, we want to push down, make sure this is firm. We're going to take our squeegee and we're going to grab our ink, and I'm going to go this side, and we just want to push this down and into our object. So it's going to push it through our mesh. If you feel the need to, you can do it a second time. There we go. And then now we can take the rest and reclaim it back into our inkwell. And hopefully, if we did that right, we'll be able to open this up and it should be on our bag. And there you go. It's nice coverage on here. I don't want to move this too much while it's initially drying. But since it's single color, we'll be okay. And we'll get a close-up of this, but that looks really good. We've got really good coverage. And like I say, we're gonna let this air dry. You can use like a blow dryer or heat to try to help cure it a little bit quicker. But in the meantime, we want to wash off our screen so that we can use it again. All right, I don't have running water out here, so I just have a bucket of clean water, good old ice cream pail, and I'm just going to kind of run over, especially the areas where the screen has been engraved from, and just try to pick up as much of that. You can kind of see there, it picked that up. And run over this other side, trying to clean off that ink from, I'm focusing primarily on the screened area that's cleaned out. If you get a little bit that sticks to the emulsion where it's not engraved, that's not the end of the world. Obviously you don't want any real heavy goops on there, because that will help interfere with your future transfers. But just kind of wipe this down as best we can, soaking up as much of that ink. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now again, I'm going to clean up our squeegee. You don't want that to get caked on there too much. I'm going to keep that nice and clean so it runs smoothly over everything. And now I'll show you. Our screen is clean, ready for another run of a different color if we wanted to do that. All right, so on my live stream, we did take this original one and played around with my logo on a couple of these. So what I want to do is actually run I'm going to put this back in the frame, and I picked up some of these neoprene can koozies, and I want to see how well we can screen print on these with the small logo, because I'm curious to see how well that might work. We all do customization of items, and a lot of times might be small runs of things, and so I want to see if this is maybe viable for an option there. So I haven't done this on neoprene. It's, you know, kind of rubbery. We'll see how well it sticks to this, but let me pop this back in the frame and we'll give it a shot on a few of these. So we're gonna wanna kind of line up where these are gonna end up. So I'm gonna have to kind of eyeball it, trying to get it somewhat centered and straight. You can just kind of see, it's hard, it's probably not gonna show up on video, but you can just kind of see. I actually wanna move this up a little bit. You can kind of see the outline of the koozie through the screen here. Just trying to make sure it's somewhat centered. I'm looking at the base here, also the top. Trying to eyeball it. So once we get it kind of set up, we can maybe put some masking tape or something on here to help us quickly align them. All right, so I think I'm gonna go with that. So what I'm gonna do is grab some masking tape and just kind of make a simple temporary jig. Down there. This one on the bottom. Let's get our black ink out. Careful not to get this on your fingers too much, otherwise you're going to be cleaning ink out of there for a while. Once again, put a healthy amount just at the top of your design, like that. Take our squeegee, push down on our material, give a nice swipe like that. Let's take a quick look at this. And that's not too bad. I might actually move it over just a little bit more. For the next one, but set that down there. Grab another one out of our box. place it down using our temporary alignment tape. And a little more ink. Matter of fact, we could have used this. There we go. Push it down and squeegee that in. There's number 2. So very cool. All right, so we completed a couple projects. The bag, as you can see here, for all my trinkets, worked out pretty well. It looks like it's centered fairly well, and it's got some nice coverage. Let me see if I can get this closer for you. Nice solid coverage on there, and once it fully cures, you want to let this dry for a good 24 to 48 hours before really using it and really getting it wet, but we'll see how that holds up. I am very pleased with how the cozies, can coolers, whatever you're calling them, came out. Now the curious thing will be is as these get used and possibly stretched, how that holds up, but the initial look, the coverage is good. It's got a nice imprint of the logo, and you know, I'd be able to do it in multiple colors, and actually once these are dry, I'd be able to flip them over and do something else on the backside. And these weren't terribly expensive. I think I got a pack of 25 of them on Amazon for right around $15. So even just starting out, you know, you can get these in at maybe about 70 cents a piece. And if you really got into it, I'm sure you could get the price down even further. So just maybe a fun thing to be able to add some customized items to your crafting, your hobby, if you're doing a small business shop or whatnot, without having to get in too big to screen printing to be able to do a few of these things. So hopefully this gives you some insight as to what you can do with it. I'm not done with this. Next thing I do want to try is to come up with a t-shirt design and do maybe a full t-shirt on the front or back of a t-shirt and see how that goes. So if you've got any ideas of what would go well on there, let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what else you might be curious this could do. I've played around with paper, wood, other products as well. So screen printing isn't just for fabrics. Definitely something you can do on a lot of items, but more playing around to come for sure. So this is a new product for xTool. They just finished up a Kickstarter campaign with it, and we'll be shipping those items out to people shortly. They are doing a pre-order. I believe their next shipment of these is hopefully going to come out in mid to late January or so. So if you're interested in that, I'll have links down below where you can check it out. Maybe check out some of their pre-order pricing on this if it's something that you want to add to your shop, your workplace. Check it out, and those links will be affiliate links. I do get a small kickback, so I appreciate you using them, but as always, no pressure, just like to share the information with you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I definitely had some fun playing around with this. It's like I said, I've done it just a couple times before. It'll be fun to have this in my shop, and we'll see where it goes. But if you have any questions or comments about this or anything else you've seen in my workshop, go ahead and leave that down below. If you thought this video was fun or informational, hit that like button. And if you're new here, want to see more of what I do in the workshop, do hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it. Otherwise, we will be back again with more projects, product reviews, and informational videos, instructional videos soon. So stay tuned. Otherwise, I hope you can get out into your workshop, make something too. We'll catch you next time.